All right, thank you for joining us this evening for our Building Safety Month panel discussion. We're discussing the topic of Built to Last. My name is Ben Song. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Johns Creek. We have a wonderful panel here today that is made up of everyone with industry experience related to the building field. Why don't we go ahead and start by having each of you briefly introduce yourself with your name, where you work, and what you do for your organization. Okay, starting with you, Sal.
My name is Sal Gato. I work for the City of Johns Creek. I am the Chief Building Official for Johns Creek. I hold a degree in architecture and a license in architecture, and I practiced architecture for roughly 30 years and gave it up, came to work for the government sector, and I've been here in Johns Creek now for about 7 years.
My name is Jonathan Livingston, and I'm the Chief Building Official for the City of Sandy Springs. Similar to Sal, I went to Georgia Tech and got a degree in civil structural engineering. I'm also licensed in the state of Georgia and was licensed in 5 other states. But I enjoy doing this type of stuff all the time. But I also help manage the multifamily rental housing for the City of Sandy Springs, which is basically all the apartments, which is over 26,000 units, close to 100 apartments, and everything else. So glad to be here.
My name is Michael Nyer. I'm a building official in a couple of jurisdictions. I've been interim building official in several cities and counties around Metro Atlanta. I have my own company. We do multifamily or third-party inspections, as well as supplementing some cities and jurisdictions around for inspections, as well as doing home inspections and plenty of testing.
My name's Eric Glick. I'm a residential and commercial building inspector. I work for a company called Charles Abbott Associates. We're subcontractors here and do building inspections for the City of Johns Creek. I've been a building inspector for almost 19 years. A lot of things have changed, but it's a great job.
My name is Lauren Johnson. I'm the Deputy Fire Marshal here in the City of Johns Creek. I'm responsible for education primarily, but I also do inspections for fire and life safety inspections for businesses. We also do other programs in residential homes and apartments and stuff like that as well. So anything we can do to kind of help spread information about fire safety and preventing fires, we're on it.
Great. So gentlemen, this question is actually to all panelists, so it's not to anyone specific, but you're welcome to jump in anytime you like. So the question is, most of us drive past construction sites. We live in homes and walk into buildings every single day without giving safety a second thought. Behind every home, building, or development is a team of dedicated professionals like yourselves who work tirelessly to protect the public. What should homeowners understand about what you do every single day and why it matters to them? Anybody would like to go?
I have to start tonight. For fire marshal's office is making sure that people can get out safely, making sure that egress is there, fire alarms work properly, things like that. And so for us, homeowners, all that stuff, make sure your alarms work, make sure, all the other things you have going on, make sure you don't block your exits, make sure you're thinking about the items that you do store in your home or have in your home. All of those things could potentially be a hazard. But really, just make sure your alarms work.
And one thing I'd like to add too is, we're all aware of first responders. We appreciate their efforts so much, police, fire, and ambulance. But we're kind of the first preventers. You don't hear about the person that narrowly fell down the stairs but caught themselves on the handrail that was required. Those kind of things don't get newsworthy. So that's one of the things that's important with our job is we're looking for those little nuances of things that people don't always think of, and that's why we're here.
So just like what Michael said, that something as simple as a handrail, that is something that is built into the code already. But how do you communicate knowing and having that knowledge and making sure that you as a homeowner get that kind of knowledge out of your contractor? So essentially what I do is I issue building permits, and it's not as simple as signing a piece of paper and saying, here's your building permit. It always begins with understanding what your project is. You go through the application process. We take a look at your contractor, and we take it from plan review through inspections. So from start to finish. And we all speak kind of a different language in what we do in our industry. Very much like, your accountant knows all the little governmental rules of the IRS, or your doctor or your attorney. We're very specialized in that manner as well. We don't expect that from homeowners. We kind of expect it from general contractors. But again, they must demonstrate that they're complying. And the language of that is drawings. That's what we look at as drawings.
The one thing I'd like homeowners to understand is, as a municipal inspector, we're not here to make you do something that you don't want to do. We're here to make sure that the code is enforced, that everything's safe for you, not just for you, but if you decide to sell your home, it'll be safe for whoever buys your home. So we're out there, we're the last line of defense as inspectors to make sure that everything's done properly so your house doesn't catch on fire, it doesn't fall down, you don't have a water heater explode and ruin your basement. There's all kinds of reasons that we're out there. So I I hope you appreciate what we do for you. We're out there to protect you and to protect your families.
Yep, and I'll just piggyback on everything else everybody said, which is absolutely correct. Bottom line, if there's a common thing that you'll hear tonight, is it's just about safety. Our job is to make sure that everybody has a safe place to live, sleep, eat, drink. And a good example, the worst thing that can happen is you can gold plate your house. You can live in a 60,000 square foot house and it'd be perfect, gold plated everything, but it doesn't mean anything if it wasn't built properly, right? If I don't do a proper foundation, what happens? Your house settles, and that gold plated, perfect McMansion that you have is not worth anything, and it's unsafe to live in. So it's everything behind the scenes before it gets covered up is what each of us do, that we are trying to make sure that everything is safe.
Appreciate everyone's feedback. The next question is actually for Sal and Eric. Okay. Code officials use building codes to keep people safe by conducting site inspections, providing code interpretation, plan review, and approving permits that ensure a safe build. Can you walk us through what happens from the moment a homeowner applies for a permit to the moment their project gets a final sign-off? This is intended for the audience to understand the full journey of the permitting process.
I'll start because it's our division in the Community Development Department, the building division. That's where the journey starts. The journey can start as simply as a homeowner wanting to know more information, either calling our front counter or actually visiting us. Sometimes if things are very vague or not understood, we offer a pre-application process where we can sit down and talk. Or you can go straight away into applying for a permit. Generally speaking, the person who is obtaining the permit holder, has to be responsible for doing the work. So you can imagine that's, generally speaking, the general contractor. But the homeowners have a piece of all that. Of course, it's, building anything is and should be a very pleasant experience. It's not like going to the doctor. But it can quickly go wrong if you don't have the prerequisite information. So it will start with going through the application process, making sure that's all straightened out, and then you submit drawings. Drawings are then routed to the different divisions that have to look at those plans. Once that's all taken care of and reviewed and signed off, we issue a permit. Then it goes to Eric.
Once the permit's issued, the permit holder schedules inspections. We have a list of inspections that have to be done. If it's new construction, we're going to do your foundation. Then they'll build the structure. We're looking at all your MEPs, mechanicals, electricals, plumbing, so all your trades. We want to make sure it's safe and meets code. And then once the project's complete, we do a final inspection. It goes back to the building department, and they approve it. Yeah.
I think one key point that may have not been mentioned thoroughly per se is the way we go about reviewing our permits. The key and the reason why we place so much importance on having the correct plans submitted for review is we want to make sure that we're accounting for that review against the code on paper, not out on the field.
Yep.
If you want to sort of touch upon that side.
The way I always look at it is, and I tell people this all the time, we're going to build this project of yours on paper, while there's still an opportunity to use an eraser versus your checkbook to pay for mistakes. Again, there's a bit of a fine line between a drawing that has like little to no information to a lot of information. We'll be talking a little bit about the use of design professionals in a bit, but as I was mentioning before, there's a certain language that is spoken. It's graphic in nature, it's illustrative, it's annotated, it's a lot of things, but it's always with an eye towards compliance. What we do that helps folks is to understand how building plans are broken down into building, structure, mechanical, electrical, permit, plumbing, excuse me, and energy, site. We tend to keep the site a little bit separate from the actual building itself, and then there's zoning. I mean, it's multi-layered, and it comes as a big surprise to most of our customers that it's that involved, and we almost always hear, well, I'm just building a simple deck. We know, but there's a lot that goes into making sure that everything is safe.
That's one of the things about having a good set of plans. It allows the inspector to do a better inspection on your property and on the project, make sure it's safe and it's going to last a long time for you and your family.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, I mean, exactly like Sal said, we do what we do, but a lot of things that we have to review are not necessarily city or local jurisdiction requirements. Some of these requirements are state requirements, that everybody has to follow. Whether you have to get a permit or not, you're still legally required to follow those. And sometimes the municipality is the responsible person to administer those state requirements. That's why we do plan review. So, to kind of go back to what your original question was, it's important to kind of do your homework up front so you're not hit with these surprises later on during plan review, because like Sal said, there's a cost associated with changing your plans and modifying them every single time. But if you just ask, I think all of us are more than willing to answer any questions you guys have before you apply for a permit. We can even meet with your design team beforehand, and then we can make sure that by the time you do submit, you have a good set of drawings that should make it through permitting pretty easily.
All right, the next question is to Jonathan. So the International Code Council points out that proper permits and code compliant construction promotes structural integrity, safer electrical and mechanical systems, and property value, reducing insurance risk and providing confidence to current and future occupants. What kinds of home projects require a permit that most homeowners don't even realize they need? One thing that comes to mind for us is like a water heater.
Yes, that's a great question. I get that asked all the time, and especially when it comes to like multifamily, because they have their maintenance staff and they replace water heaters all the time. But I'll give you a good example. All right, the answer to your question is basically everything more or less will need a permit. So if you're installing something new or taking something out and replacing it with something new, it's usually going to need a permit. What does not require a permit is a repair. What is a repair? So repair, let's say your water heater isn't working and you need to replace the heating element inside, but you still keep your original water heater. That's a repair. You don't need a permit for that. Talk about your electrical outlets. They were the old round ones and you want the nice modern square Decora ones. Switching those out do not require a permit. But the second you relocate an outlet from here to there or put a brand new water heater in, you need a permit for that. Now that sounds trivial, but it's important, because if you don't do it right, people can get hurt, it can start a fire. One of my marriage properties, I had a homeowner, an elderly lady, lived in an apartment complex. She called us and she kept saying, I feel dizzy all the time. I'm like, well, okay, you got my attention. She's like, yeah, I keep having to go outside, I can't breathe. So I go outside, catch my breath, and then I went to sleep, and I closed my door, and so this happened. But this has been going on for how long? She's like, well, since yesterday. Did anything happen? They changed the water heater. I'm like, okay, great. Hold on a minute. So I called the fire department. They went out there and right away, and with their gas detector, and as soon as they sit in, that thing went beep, 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 beep. The maintenance staff had replaced the water heater. Electrical was fine. They installed it perfectly. They had hot water. They're like, cool, we're done. Hot water's coming out. What they didn't do, it was a gas water heater, which has the exhaust. So that exhaust was exhausting inside the apartment. That's carbon monoxide. That's like running your car in a closed garage. So she was having carbon monoxide poisoning, which is odorless. You don't know it. So fortunately, she survived. It was an easy fix, but that's a classic example of why you want to get a permit for those things, so that a professional can come behind and make sure that they connected the exhaust. It's something as simple as that. The pipes was there, they just forgot to connect the dots. So something as simple that can save somebody's life, and that's what we're here to do.
Is there any other example that anyone wants to share?
I mean, I would say, to kind of dovetail what he was saying was, things that you'd want a permit for. Decks, water heaters, furnaces, AC units. Some jurisdictions would require one on a roof or a fence. And you think, well, why would they want a fence? Well, are you putting it on your property or not? Obviously, additions, replacement windows, some places. Yeah, if you're doing any kind of remodeling, I have a lot of contractors that'll say to me, well, we didn't change anything structural. Yeah, but you took all the drywall down. You're exposing a lot of things there that we want to look at. So, those are kind of things that we would want to see. People will ask me, well, why would you want a permit on a replacement window? Well, there's a tempered glazing requirement, and there might be an egress component that you have to look at. So we would rather help you on that front in the beginning. Hey, instead of ordering a double hung window, maybe order a casement window for this location. It's a lot cheaper, like Sal was saying, it's a lot cheaper and easier to erase something than to buy another window, or have to wait for a tempered glass to come in because the contractor forgot to order tempered glass for the window over the bathtub. We'd rather help you out with stuff like that. I have, as sitting here, I've had the pleasure of working with just about everyone here on one aspect or another, and I think all of us come from the same cloth of we want to help. We want to help you be compliant. That's our whole goal. We don't want to just slow down your project and make everything difficult. We want to help you get there. We want the same thing you do. It's a safe house. So, anything else?
One of the questions I get all the time, I go out, we inspect electric vehicle charging stations at people's homes, and when we go out, they say, well, why do they have to have a permit? Well, if they don't do the proper charging station or have the properly sized breaker, it'll overheat the battery on your car, it'll catch on fire, and you could talk to the fire department. It's hard to put those fires out on those batteries on the electric vehicles. So that's one thing that people are surprised about. They want to know why they have to get a permit for their charging station.
That's all great feedback. So actually, it's a great segue to our fire marshal, Deputy Fire Marshal Lauren. So the question is for you. Beyond smoke detectors, what are the fire safety features built into a modern home that residents rarely think about, but that truly saves lives? And what should homeowners check on a regular basis to make sure those features are working correctly?
He actually just touched on it. He was talking about carbon monoxide alarms. Those are one of the things that they look at the alarms in the ceiling, oh, I'm good. But carbon monoxide, odorless, it's not visible. It can affect you really quickly. And, if you don't have one, you're susceptible to it. It's one of those properties of brain combustion that we don't really know what's going on. It can have something going on in your walls. You can have something discharging that's not going out, getting out where it's supposed to, and could lead to a lot of problems and potentially death. So,
Do they still do the change out procedures?
yes. So we do have a home survey program here in the city of Johns Creek. We actually do provide smoke alarms with the Red Cross. We have a program with them. And so we can provide smoke alarms. And if we do have a carbon monoxide, we can try and provide one of those as well. We have like a checklist that we go through, run through, talking about all types of things that could potentially cause fires, from electrical to, their gas appliances and stuff like that. And we cover all those things while we're sitting there with them. It's like the easiest 45 minutes they can have while we do a little check around their house. And then, hopefully everything works out after that. We'll swap out the alarms if they need.
If I may, one other thing that a lot of people don't even know they have, especially if you've got a newer house, is arc fault breakers. They stop electrical fires. And testing is so complex that nobody ever does it. There's a little test button that you push the test button, trip the breaker off, turn it back on. And all you're doing is forcing the mechanism to work. But just checking those, periodically with your furnace filter, quarterly maybe, they do stop electrical fires. If there's a break in that line, or there's a breach in the conductors run into it, or even a plug-in item, checking those out could certainly stop an electrical fire for your home.
I got another one too. Your dryer exhaust. All right. The lint that is in your dryers, what you clean out right there is only 25% of the lint. Do you know where the other 75% of the lint is? It's stuck in that tube that goes out or inside your dryer. All right. And what's inside your dryer is these heating elements. So if you're ever in Boy Scouts, we got some in the room, one of the best fire starters is lint.
Yeah, collect that.
Collect that. It's the best fire starter. Yeah, go clean your lint and then start a fire with it somewhere else.
And how often would you say to clean those?
As often as you can, but I would say at least, they say quarterly, or I say every 6 months, I think is what the general rule is. I would at least do it every year. You would be surprised how much actually gets stuck in there. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. Possibly have that done professionally, because the run of that line could be 20, 25 feet with many different elbows and changes in direction. Professionals have a very special series of instruments that they use to brush and clean it out, and it's well worth it for sure.
So I think I failed to mention this for those who are in attendance tonight. We'll have a Q&A session at the end. Hopefully we'll be running through our panel sort of discussion within the 45 minutes and reserve some time for Q&A. So the next question actually goes to Sal and Jonathan. We probably all heard this and experienced it, right? Homeowner is told by a contractor, don't worry about obtaining a permit. It'll just slow us down and cost more money. What are the real practical risks of going along with that advice for the homeowner, but also for the contractor?
Yeah, don't do it. That's the simplest advice I can give. We see it all too often where sometimes the contractor comes in and it's like, I don't need a permit for it. They just start working even though they know they need a permit for it. Or the contractor leaves and they're left with the homeowners. They got paid a good chunk and then they leave, and then the homeowner is left holding the bag trying to figure out what to do. I've given other seminars on this, other panel discussions, and the biggest thing you can do is just make sure you do your homework. You get your competitive bids, and usually if somebody's low or really low from the others, you probably don't want to select them, because one or two things are going to happen is they're trying to lowball or get away from having to do certain code requirements, or they're just going to put change orders in. It's like, well, that wasn't included in my bid, and then you're going to get stuck with a more expensive build, and it's going to take, we've literally had poor contractors come in, and it's taken them a year and a half, 2 years to build a house, and in the meantime, a good qualified contractor is knocking it out in 6 months or a year faster. So it's pretty amazing.
Generally speaking, the contractors that take that approach, they're not licensed contractors. They're not licensed through the state. They won't tell you that. They may not even tell you if they're insured. They just give you a price. It's on a piece of paper that is not even a contract, it's just a proposal. And they want quick in, quick out with no accountability whatsoever. We offer that. We offer that accountability. It's just the right thing to do. If everything falls in line, really, we tell folks there's no reason why you can't be in and out within about 5 business days. And again, safety is worth those 5 days, even 10 days, and look at it this way. We become your advocate. We're the ones who are checking someone else's work. We're independent in that way. And that kind of adversarial relationship that we have with the contractor is invaluable. And so we offer accountability, we offer code compliance, something that most people are not aware of. It takes us a long time to memorize a book that's that thick.
That's just one of them.
That's just one of like 13 books, you know. And of course, there's a lot of books that relate to commercial projects. But that's basically the Bible for residential projects.
You know, and one thing I would say too is, you know, the risk of, let's say, doing a basement finish. People will always go, well, I don't want my taxes to go up. Well, your taxes are already factored into you having a basement. Doesn't matter whether it's finished or not. But one of the bigger risks is by not pulling a permit is, let's say, heaven forbid, something happens, the house burns. Well, the insurance company comes in and says, well, according to the thing, you have an unfinished basement.
Yeah.
So what are you going to get? You're going to get an unfinished basement. And what if they determine that the fire was started by the unlicensed electrician?
You're going to deny coverage.
Now you've lost your coverage. So there are some real big risks in that. And then let's say, you know, the worst case scenario, somebody perishes in that scenario because of maybe an egress window issue. Now you could be even actually held liable. So, I mean, there's some really big risks in not having a permit for your project.
Yeah, and as far as construction contracting goes, Sal kind of touched on that a little bit. A couple key things to look out for. So if you get a contract, like you said, you don't want a contract that says, I'll build this thing for X dollars. That's great. What you really are looking for is kind of an itemized, I'm going to use this brand at this type of thing, because there's a huge difference in quality and a huge difference in performance and a huge difference in cost and lifespan on these different types of products. So make sure you get an itemized list. As far as payment, if you do get a contractor, reputable contractors will not say, I need all the money up front. That's pretty much guaranteed your first red flag. All right? Reputable contractors typically want like a deposit, like I need 10 or 15%, just enough to cover their expenses to buy the materials. All right? Because reputable companies have the cash up front to carry and build that through, and then they'll have milestones of payments. You know, we're gonna do a 50% completion, a 75% payment, and then a 100% payment. You know, and I would hold that final payment until after the city has inspected everything and you have your certificate of occupancy for a new home or your certificate of completion for an additional alteration or accessory structure or whatever else it is. Because until you get that, you're really not done. So, a couple tips there.
Great points, great points. I know even when I was getting my retaining wall done, I mean, it comes down to the scope of work and really itemizing that and understanding it, because some contractors may calculate it differently. So I think you have to truly understand what their unit of measurement is and the cost. So that's a great point. Next question goes to Michael and Lauren. Lauren, it's more from a commercial standpoint, but we'll go with the residential first. So when you inspect a home, or in your case, Lauren, let's say a business that has been renovated, how can you tell whether the work was properly permitted and inspected by the city? And what happens to a buyer when they discover unpermitted work after the sale closes?
You want to start?
It's not really something I.
Well, that's an interesting one. I mean, usually if I'm going into, let's say, for instance, a basement, I'll use that as an example just because it's easy. A lot of times I'll go into a basement and I'll find where there's no heat ducts, heat registers in the rooms, or receptacles are missing. Those are kind of telltale signs that, hey, any inspector looking at this would be calling this out. You know, what are the ramifications? I mean, you know, even on commercial businesses, a lot of times I'll run into businesses that either don't have exit lights or don't have emergency lights, or they don't work. Those are huge telltale signs. But ramifications, I mean, you know, when you go to sell that, if you've got something that wasn't permitted, and somebody who might be savvy, they might contact the jurisdiction and say, hey, did you have a permit on this? And they go, no, we didn't have a permit on it. Why? What's there? Oh, nothing. And it's a completely finished basement. Then that's going to come back and be an issue for you on your sale. And I've run into a lot of situations where we've been called to do an after-the-fact inspection where we're opening up little sections of walls to try to verify things, or even try to climb up into ceilings to look down into walls to see if stuff was done. Sometimes we find stuff that's not done and it's got to be fixed. But yeah, that can be a real problem after the fact.
Warren, do you have anything to add to that? We covered it all?
For me specifically, I do kind of more after the fact inspections.
Yeah.
However, you know, if it's not built to the plans, then it's not continuing.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, how often have you gone to, when you have a fire and you go do your investigation of the fire, you're always trying to determine source of fire. And a lot of times you see those at electrical outlet or something like that. We had one that, we had an electrical fire in a house where somebody was spray painting over everything, and they had taken off all the outlets. And that wet water-based paint made contact with the two bare wires. They were not covered or protected, and it caused it to spark and catch fire inside the box. And it spread inside the wall, which spread up into the attic. So something as simple as that. And fire department will find that out after the fact.
But no fire blocking.
No fire blocking or anything, and you allow that fire to spread. And that's one of the things that we check for is we basically trying to contain and limit the spread of fire is part of what we all do when we go do inspections. So,
Just threw a term out there, just.
yeah,
Grab a mic.
Introduce it slowly.
All right, so next question is for Eric. What is the most common deficiency you have encountered while performing permit inspections? And why do you think that is?
just one.
Oh, you could give us a couple.
One of the big things, we have a brand new, well, it's a fairly brand new deck code that went into effect, and have a lot of problems with decks, and they have to meet some of the same requirements that your house meets. So if you have a run of stairs and it's more than 3 stairs, it's supposed to have a graspable handrail that you can grab onto to walk up and down those stairs. That's a biggie. A lot of people hire people to do deck projects for them, and they forget to do that. That's one of the major things we normally fail deck inspections, deck finals on, is that they don't have a graspable handrail. And that's there to protect you and your family. It's also to keep you from having to go to court. If you don't put that deck rail up there and one of your friends falls down those stairs, more than likely your homeowner's insurance they're not going to cover that injury. So it protects you too.
And I think I would also say, you know, Sal mentioned it was fire blocking. Fire blocking was a constant issue, and we run into that a lot. And while all you're doing is trying to compartmentalize the movement of fire through concealed areas inside of a building, because you want to stop it from getting into the attic. Because once it gets into the attic, the building's gone, or the next floor. Once it gets into that floor system, I mean, it rips across the floor. I had a contractor one time say to me, well, you're putting plywood in there. What kind of fire blocking is that? It's like, well, through burn time on a 3/4 inch piece of plywood is 20 minutes. So I have 20 minutes to walk leisurely out of the house. You got 1 second. Which one do you want? So I think those are some pretty major ones that we run into a lot.
Yeah, that was a very vivid example. So I think a lot of people.
Sorry.
It's good. It's good. It needs an
I'm the
impact.
ticking time bomb guy.
It needs an impact. Yeah, most definitely. So continuing on, it may be for Michael and Jonathan actually. What are the most common structural problems you encounter in existing homes? The things that homeowners often can't see, but that trained eyes can catch before they become dangerous or deadly.
Yes, I would say probably the number one thing, well, a couple different things. So let's talk about an existing house. So common, around this area is people take an old ranch house and we say pop the top and add a second floor to it. All right, but the original houses were 8-foot walls. All right, but everybody wants a 10-foot ceiling. So what I see a lot of contractors is they just build a 2-foot wall on top of an 8-foot wall. Well, what's the problem with that? You have 2 walls stacked on top of each other and you have a wind load and it just creates this hinge point. It's not one continuous stud. The code actually requires you to balloon frame, which is one continuous stud, but they'll just stack walls. So that's one problem in existing homes that we see all the time. The other thing is new construction or even remodels. They want to open up these houses and put a huge beam where it used to be 2 rooms. They want one big old wide open room. They'll put a large LVL, which is a large wood beam, and they forget to put the post down. Or they put the post down and you can see it on the second floor, on the first floor framing, and the post is right there. That's perfect. Great job. But did they chase that load all the way down to your foundation? Usually the answer is no. If you actually go look and inspect and go look underneath on the lower floor, you'll see, well, they had the post up here, but there's nothing underneath to hold that post. So your structural framing that holds up your entire floor system, and maybe more, is not supported. It looks like it is from here, but it's actually not. Or even if they put the post down below, there's that space where your floor system is that you have to put blocking in to transfer that load all the way down to your foundation. Those are the two biggest things that we see all the time that constantly gets overlooked. And once it gets covered with drywall, you don't know about it until one day you're walking and you see, why is my floor all of a sudden nosedive right at a wall? It's because they forgot to put a beam underneath it, or they forgot to put a post under the beam right there. That's exactly why, 100% of the time.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, it reminded me of HGTV. Everyone knows LVL beams now.
Yeah.
But what they don't show you is
Yeah.
connection points.
I always say death is in the details, you know, right? Because it's never sizing the beam. This designing and sizing the beam is the easy part. It's how you put it together and how you detail and how you put those connections together. That's what makes a difference. That's what's gonna keep the building from falling down. That's what's gonna save lives.
Having those pieces. And having those pieces tied together.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we go out and it'll be 3 or 4 or 5 LVLs sitting up there, but they're not tied together. So we're acting individually. And that's not a beam, that's kind of a mess. Yeah, that's a series of singles.
So the next question goes to Sal and Jonathan. When should a homeowner use an architect versus a structural engineer? Where does one role end and the other begin? And is there ever a time when they overlap? Mr. Architect, since you go first.
All right, so I guess you need to understand the basic difference between the two. I'll try to be brief. When you hire an architect, you're hiring someone who understands the built environment, how you use a building, how it feels, how it flows. Everyone has a vision. And what you do as an architect is you work with them in what's called the program, and you expand upon it and you make sense out of it, and you dissuade people from doing something that just won't make any sense. And it could be aesthetic, or it can be, it could have some major impacts on structural. When I was practicing, I would do some structural design, or at least look in the code book and follow, for dimensional lumber, follow what the spans would be, what the posts would be. I knew that much, but that's as far as I would take it. I'll let Jonathan talk about how structural engineers are different than what architects do, but I will tell you, I would only take it so far. I knew what my limitations were and how good consultants make all the difference in the world.
That's absolutely correct. Who helps you out with your project is very critical. I would say, in simple terms, the architect is, the dreamer, the visionary, figure out how everything goes together, and then the structural engineer's responsibility is to make your dreams a reality. And sometimes that's easy if you have a good architect that is aware of basic fundamental structural framing and load paths. It makes my job a lot easier. The challenge today is everybody wants big open spaces and all that, and that gets very difficult. And without a good architect, sometimes they put this big old wall and they put this massive beam, this massive column up on the second or the third floor, and there's not a wall underneath it to support it. So now you have to put a post in, or you have to put another very expensive beam, a transfer girder to carry that one post, which now sits over the windows. Now I need a big header to go. You got to chase that load all the way down without a good architectural design. So that's where we come in, and that's definitely the biggest difference, is just making sure that we can chase those loads. When I did design 25 years ago, the first thing I would do is I would take the architectural floor plan and I overlay the upper floor on top of the lower floor, and I see where the walls stack. And that tells me immediately I need a beam right there. Because if you don't, you'll find out later on.
So from a practical, more relatable, let's say, examples for the context of Johns Creek, let's say, how would an architect be used for an addition from your, let's say, an example from you, Sal? And from you, Jonathan, how would a structural engineer assist in a let's say, a tiered retaining wall?
Well, so you got different.
Yes.
Different types, yeah. So again, an addition to an existing home, what an architect can bring to the whole scheme is knowing exactly where to place that addition. It's not always as simple as saying, I want it to be in this corner or that corner. It's again it has a lot to do with how things flow, how they're orientated, how they can work structurally so that there's minimal financial impact in making it work that way. But think of it, an addition, well, it could be like Jonathan mentioned earlier, you pop in the top and you're putting the addition on top. I did a few of those. They were nerve-wracking. Yeah, because you can't always meet what the homeowners want in the way of their vision. And you'd always get, well, why not? It's like, well, okay, take several years of structural design and compress it into 3 words, it won't work. But because an addition has so many other components, it's not just structural. That's the static part of architecture. Once you lay down a stud, it ain't moving. Well, hopefully it won't move. Yeah. So that takes care of structural. But then you've got all your trades. You've got what we call building systems and building services. Everything that uses power, gas, water. You bring in water. You lose sanitation. So it's mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And now you could add in our modern era low voltage. It's all that kind of put together. Oh, energy too. You have to comply with the energy code. To what level do you pack a perimeter wall with insulation? Can you do a trade-off where you use 2x6s on a perimeter wall and then less insulation up on the roof? It's things like that. So again, as an architect, you would utilize the services of other consultants, structural on down. Most architects think that they know enough to do almost everything. But then there are projects, we've noticed there are projects that lend themselves perfectly to just one engineer, and structural engineering is one of them.
So real quick, I guess the other thing to add, when we talk about energy, we're talking about heating, cooling, and how to maintain.
Well, heating and cooling.
Well, that's the
Yeah, heating and cooling is mechanical
Yep.
mostly. But they too have certain energy requirements that they have to stay within, like SEER levels and things of that nature. And one of the things we ask for during the process of permitting a single-family home is a manual J and manual S, another series of words that don't mean much to most people. But there's got to be a way of heating and cooling a home efficiently, energy efficient. But the passive use of insulation is what keeps your home warm in the winter and cool in the summer. You can't stress that enough, but there is a diminishing returns on putting too much insulation that won't just come back to you.
Yeah, so before I talk about the retaining walls, one thing I want to add to exactly what Sal said is if you do an addition to a house or an interior remodel where you're, say, taking out a load-bearing wall, you need to hire a structural engineer to make sure that the existing structure can support the additional load that you're applying to it. For example, if I do a 2-story addition on the outside wall, well, maybe that was a 2x4 wall originally, but now it has another floor load on it, and it has, another roof on it that it never had before. So you just literally doubled the load on it. So that foundation wall and maybe the footing underneath it may need to be larger than what it is right now. And if you don't size it properly and strengthen it, then your whole house just settles. So again, you got to be careful when you do additions. You probably should hire a structural engineer to verify that your existing structure can support it. Otherwise, you need to, come up with a repair to strengthen it so that it can. Now, as far as retaining walls go, retaining walls is another thing. There's different types of retaining walls too. All right, so a retaining wall is a wall that's designed to hold back, in most cases, earth, of some sort. And the loading that goes into that can just be earth. If it's flat, it's one thing. If it's sloped, it has to carry the extra load from the soil. So what happens is there's a pressure from the soil that pushes on that wall. And if there's water behind it, hydrostatic pressure, it's even more load on that wall. So what you don't want is you don't want the wall to just fall over. So retaining walls can fail in several different manners. One is the whole wall, if it's built really strong, it just slides over. Or if it's not built strong, it just falls over. Or it can be a combination of the two. So that's where structural engineering, that's the things you need to be careful of, and the type of wall you put in. Concrete wall is one, CMU wall is another, but they're very dependent on the size and the location of the footing. And what's really critical is the reinforcing steel, and not just, did I put it in there? Where did you put it? It needs to be on the outside face or the inside face, or if it's in the middle, it has to be designed to be in the middle, because there's certain faces that are more efficient and where that rebar actually needs to go. If I have multiple walls, what happens is, if I have two walls, and one up high, one down lower, what happens is the soil distribution on a footing is approximately 45 degrees. So the bottom of that footing, the load's going roughly in the ground 45 degrees. So if I have another wall right next to the other one, what happens is I had the regular load that was on it before, but now I have the foundation from the wall above also pushing on it. So you have to account for that additional load that you didn't think about when you're designing that lower wall. Or you make sure you have them far enough apart so they don't affect each other. So there's a lot of things that go into it. Slope stability, there's a lot of things, but in general, those are some big things that you want to make sure that you look out for. If you do a modular block walls are basically like Legos. There's no cement or anything. Sometimes they use structural adhesive, but they're just basically Legos. And if I stack up a bunch of Legos high enough, eventually the Legos will just fall over. All right? The thing that prevents a modular block wall from failing is every other course, you put this geogrid, which is basically looks like an orange construction basketball net. And it goes into the ground, and it has to be embedded in the ground X feet, depending on how tall your wall is. And then you bury it with dirt and pack that down. You go up 2 more blocks, you put another lay in, and that's just basically like a tie that holds that wall from falling over, those Legos.
Not your favorite wall, is it?
They look nice, they're very easy, but it's hard to inspect it because, again, it's like Legos, they go up very fast. And do people actually compact the layer between the geogrid? Probably not. Sure.
Yeah.
But, that's why we have safety factors on things.
Again, like you mentioned, devil's in the details, right?
That was
That's the
absolutely
thing.
details.
It
Yes.
it's much harder than what it looks like.
There's a lot more that goes into than what you can see. It's all pretty pictures when it's all said and done, but it's what's behind that's probably more important.
Right. Sounds good. Thank you. Next question is to Eric and Michael. So this is sort of like the difference between a structural engineer and architect. What is the difference between a home inspection and a building permit inspection? Many homeowners assume that they're all the same. Can you clear up that difference for our audience?
We could probably both talk on that one.
Yeah. A city building inspector or county building inspector it all depends on your workload. A private home inspector, they may be able to come out and look at your house, the rough framing, rough MEPs of your house. They may be able to stand out there for 3 hours, hour and a half, 2-3 hours, and look at everything. We might only have half an hour, 40 minutes to do that inspection to try and make sure your house is safe. So we do a really good job, but we can't take the same amount of time that a private, and I get people asking me all the time, well, the private home inspector was out here and they were here for 3 hours. You were only here for 45 minutes. And I say, we do the same inspections, but we have time constraints we have to work on, because some days we might have 20, 25 inspections to do. So we have to make sure we do a quality inspection, but then move on and get to our next stop.
But I think it's also important to mention that you're there for a specific inspection, right? It's not all comprehensive. There are itemized or sequenced inspections that you're accounting for, so you're looking at one thing versus someone else coming in and looking at the whole house.
Yes, we're there for a specific thing, so that's another reason it might not take as much time as when you have a private home inspector come in.
Yeah. And I mean, we've both got experience in both of these. So I think one of the big differences is on a home inspection, a lot of it, I'd say the majority of it, is functionality. Does this turn on? Does this work? Does this happen when I do this? That's the big thing with home inspections. Now, when you start getting into like a final inspection or one that's being built, a rough inspection, if you will, those, like Eric was saying, I mean, yeah, on a private side, they can spend 2 or 3 hours there. But also on the municipal side, because I've worked on both sides of this coin, on the municipal side, when you go out, you're looking for specific things. You're going, all right, is the fire blocking in place? Are the beams done? Are the loads being transferred? Is the electrical in place? You just kind of run through your checklist, and if everything's in place, I'm moving on. Whereas on a home inspection style report like that, they can spend time and go, okay, well, let's measure each one of these floor ties. You know, they can be a little bit more specific. And then when you're doing like even a new house final, yeah, there's some code things that are come up. And I mean, I've worked with a lot of jurisdictions where, you know, I'll send over the report and go, hey, look, I spent 3 hours there. You can only spend about 20, 30 minutes. Take a look at this. Sometimes some of it's up to interpretation, and sometimes things will be different for different jurisdictions mildly. But generally speaking, I mean, we're all trying to hit on the same thing. But I think that's the big difference between a home inspection, which is more functionality, than a code inspection.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think even for both those cases too, one thing for sure is it's not aesthetics.
Yeah, very. I have a hard time with aesthetics because what bothers me might not bother you,
Right.
you know? And if I'm pointing it out, it's gonna bother everybody.
Yeah, but aesthetics is not in the code.
Yeah,
You
but
know?
it's not something we can regulate.
Sure. So actually, I'm sorry to say it, but this is our last question, and this is open to all panelists. So going back to the fact that it's Building Safety Month, and we know that Building Safety Month is more than about awareness, it's about action. Each of you play a different but deeply interconnected role in making sure the buildings in our community are truly built to last. I'd like to close by asking each of you, if every resident in this room did just one thing in the next 30 days to invest in the safety of their home or community, what would you tell them to do?
Want to work this way?
Let's start with Lauren.
Yeah.
I haven't heard.
I haven't spoken in a while.
Yeah.
So I covered alarms and stuff like that, but I would say one thing now, we are coming more enthralled with batteries and electrical stuff. And so take a look at the things that you have in your home that are run off batteries. Make sure you're charging them safely. If you notice that your batteries are kind of puffing up or expanding or anything like that, smelling weird, looking, sounding, making noises, any of that stuff, go ahead and get rid of them, discard them how you're supposed to appropriately. Just look at the electrical side of that stuff now, because batteries is the future, but it's also something that we definitely need to pay attention to.
I think a big thing that a lot of jurisdictions have been in have fires, and the families did not have an emergency action plan. They didn't know what to do if there was a tornado, a fire. So that's a big thing, and it's easy to do, and it's a good way to work with your family so that your children and guests know how to get out of the house if the smoke alarms go off and there's a fire in the home. That's a big thing to protect yourself and your families.
Those are excellent. And I would say, I mean, I'll dovetail what he was saying earlier is, change the batteries on your smoke alarms. Check them periodically. When the time changes, check your smoke alarms. Do stuff like that. Watch how you're storing stuff. He was talking about earlier, having rags piled up and oils and greases and stuff like that. Monitor that stuff for yourself. And then, maybe even updating smoke alarms or getting rid of double keyed deadbolts on your exit doors. those have been pretty much banned in every jurisdiction around. So whether you're in Sandy Springs or Johns Creek or, in City of Atlanta, you shouldn't have double keyed deadbolts, a key on the inside and outside to open a deadbolt. They're hazardous for children and
That's a
adults
trap.
alike. Yeah, it's a trap.
Yeah.
So get rid of those. Spend some money and buy a new lock.
Yeah, they're taking all my examples, but no, I would definitely say if you're talking about saving lives, and was that the most bang for your buck, smoke alarms. I think if I could do one thing and I could give them all away, I would. And just to kind of reiterate, like exactly what are the requirements for smoke alarms, you have to have a smoke alarm in every single bedroom, and you have to have one in the hallway that serves those bedrooms. So if I have 3 bedrooms over here and 1 hallway, I need 3 smoke alarms and 1 in the hallway. If I have a master bedroom on the other side of the house, then I need 1 for the bedroom and then 1 for the hallway that serves that one as well. The current code actually requires you to have at least 1 on every single floor as well. If I exit the hallway and I have a vaulted ceiling that is more than 2 feet taller, I have to have 1 in that upper ceiling too. Because if there's a fire, that heat and that smoke rises and it gets trapped up here before that smoke comes back down. But in the meantime, your house is on fire, but your smoke alarm way down here didn't go off because heat rises. So there's lots of new technology in smoke alarms. All right, there are some out there now that are fully wireless. They're required by code to have them. They're required to be changed. They have a service life of 10 years. So you have to change them. You're required by code to change them every 10 years. And now the new ones, they have fully wireless ones. So you don't have, they used to have to be hardwired. Well, now they have fully wireless ones now. And they have a sealed 10-year battery in them, which means the worst thing about fire alarms is when that battery runs out, you hear that chirping all day. That's the most annoying thing, and people will just take them down because they don't have a 9-volt battery laying around. All right? And now you're unprotected. So I recommend buying, if you replace them, buy the ones that have a 10-year sealed battery in them. The prices come way, way down. You never have to change your battery, and they're fully wireless.
And then one thing he mentioned earlier was heat detector. Had the heat detector in the attic.
Yep, and like I said, the technology is evolving so much in smoke detectors, like how it detects. It's not just heat; it's sometimes it's smoke, and sometimes it's particulates. So that's the most bang for your buck, and that will absolutely save your life because the fire happens when you're sleeping and you want to get out.
Jonathan, you kind of quickly mentioned the part about how the wireless and all that, and they were hardwired. You want to elaborate on what you mean by the interconnectivity?
Yeah,
And how that helps someone?
Absolutely, yeah. So what that means is if one smoke alarm goes off in your house, all of them are required to go off. Why is that important? What if I'm sleeping upstairs? Or let's say I'm in the basement, all right? And a fire goes off in my game room or whatever, and I'm downstairs. Well, that alarm goes off, but that basement door is closed, and I'm up on the 2nd floor. Well, in the meantime, my house is burning underneath me, and I don't know about it. So interconnected means if that one goes off in the basement, you hear it up in your bedroom upstairs on the 2nd floor. That gives you enough time to get out of your house. So that is why all of your alarms have to be interconnected, meaning when one goes off, they all go off.
And that gets noisy.
It gets real
really,
noisy.
Yeah. And the overall concept is that humans, your family, when you're asleep, you are vulnerable. You're not aware. You could be a deep sleeper and a train could go by and you're now waking up. So imagine how vulnerable you are to a fire. And I think, Lauren, maybe you can elaborate on this. A lot of people don't necessarily die from the fire, from the flames, right? They die from the smoke.
Right. With these new modern homes with open floor plans, smoke travels through your home really quick. And so we always recommend close before you doze, secure your room. And that way you kind of compartmentalize yourself in between the smoke and everything else going on. And then have that alarm that actually alerts you so that you can have time to think about your escape plan and thinking about how you would get out. Your window may be an option. But again, if you haven't opened your window in 10 years and if you painted the walls of your house and now your windows are stuck closed, that might be an issue too. So, check your exits, make sure everything works properly. But yeah, these modern homes now, they are built, they're insulated. So they get hotter, you know, and the smoke stays in there and it travels around the house really quick. So it's really important to think about how you would get out and where you would go if there's an emergency of some sort.
Yeah, it's very interesting how some improvements could also turn into a hazard later on. But it's funny, we all laugh at the fact that someone couldn't open the window because they painted over it. It happens very often.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, this wraps it up, and I wanted to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight. I mean, it was very informative. Hopefully the audience felt the same way. With any questions, again, you're more than welcome to reach out to each and any one of these professionals in their each respective jurisdictions, especially in Johns Creek. Obviously, you met the three that work for the fire department and community development. We're here to serve the public and make sure that everything is done in a safe manner, and we wanted to make sure that you're protecting your investment. And the number one investment a lot of times for us is our home. And so we want to make sure that we continue to be part of this sort of this effort to educate and inform. And hopefully, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And we thank you for your time, and thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you.